An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight? I just started talking with my mic muted, so there was a bit of a silence there. I apologize. This is why I always ask for someone to shout me out in the comments to make sure that I'm actually speaking to you. I am technologically impaired. I think the way John said it was, I have about Amish levels of technological understanding. So if you can hear me, someone shout me out in the chat. Just let me know that you can hear me right now. I just finished off great conversation with Mike Barron and John's Longbox over on his channel with Comic Book Team Up. Actually, it was mostly a conversation with listening to John and Mike, but yeah, I could throw my 2 cents in whenever I wanted, which was great. Let's see who's in the chat here. Let's see. Oh, Robert, thank you very much. He says he can hear me. Great. Thank you very much. So I wasn't exactly sure what I would call tonight's. Let me see if I can move myself to the corner here. I'm not entirely sure what I was going to call tonight's little episode of Making Comics Fun Again, because I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about for a long time, which is uh, basically what I think of as one of the essential elements for comics, which is missing right now, and it's the ability to transition from panel to panel, page to page, scene to scene. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. And I wanted to put that right at the first because I realized that Comic Essentials is very vague for my thumbnail, but I didn't know what else to call it. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So before I get there, I just want to let everyone know that if you're in the chat and you have questions, just throw your questions into the chat. I will get to them after I do my rambling on about making comics. And if you could just either tag me in them or put a question mark at the very least on them so that I know that you're asking a question for me. If you want, you can ask me any question about anything, about my videos here, about my videos on the weekend, which are much more in-depth, and or about my comics, the graphic novels that I'm making, anything you want. Put it in the chat if you want to ask me questions. Also, what else was I going to say right off the bat? No, I think we'll just start off right here tonight. Don't have a whole lot of big spiel going on. That's why there was a very short window of opportunity for me to do this stream. But like I said, what I want to talk about is essential thing about comics, and I'm going to put up some usual things that I put up in the background because these are pictures from the master. These are pages from master storytellers, like Neil Adams here. And here's the thing that really, when I read Will Eisner's book over again, which is Comics in Sequential Art, one of the things that he focuses on, I think it's chapter 2, is panel transition, and he talks about panels a lot. I think it's chapter 4. Anyways, it's the longest chapter in the book. Talks about transitions and how they have to deal with panels, because he's talking about panels during the entire long chapter. But one of the things that he talks about, and one of the things that I find missing within certainly current comics, is the understanding of the uniqueness of the medium. And it's the reason why I say that is because it's not a Netflix pitch. It's not a movie. It's not a television show. This is one of the things that Will Eisner talks about a lot when he talks about sequential art. He says that, you can take a comic book and possibly make it into a movie, but he doesn't think it will work very well. You might be able to do it in the opposite direction, he says, but still it wouldn't work very well because they're unique mediums. And one of the things that's very unique, and I would say absolutely unique with comic books, is the fact that the transitions happened over and over and over again in the entire book. And this is one of the things he touches on, but doesn't really focus on in his book about comics and sequential art. It's the fact that if you are watching a movie, or if you're watching a television show or a stage play, or if you're reading a book, there is really a page break that you have to deal with. And you got to, well, when you're reading a novel, certainly when you're reading a novel, it doesn't matter. You don't think about those things when you create the novel, where the page is going to break. You might think about where the chapter break is, but that's about it. So there's not a whole lot of breaking in of, let's say, transitions from one scene to another that is going to interrupt your flow of reading. And certainly when you're watching a television show or a movie or a stage play, again, there might be, old style. If you're watching something a long time ago, there would be commercial breaks. I suppose you would take that into account. Older shows would take that very definitely into account and use it to its advantage. I'm thinking the original Star Trek. They did that perfectly with the heightened music at the end of every scene that was going to lead into a commercial, so that you're sort of on a cliffhanger, you come back. But again, that is something that's there only once in a while. It's 3 or 4 times during a show, and that's an hour show. And when you're watching a movie, they're not there at all. Now, you might have transitions between one scene or another, but it's a transition that's controlled by the fact that you don't have control over the timing of anything when you're watching a movie or a television show. It's because the movie itself moves along at a mechanical speed, and so does your television show. But within sequential art, that transition is one where you can trip up the reader at every opportunity. And that's why it's supremely important and is an essential thing for comics. It's one of the things that you need to understand, essentially, both as a writer and as an artist. If you're both, or if you're one or the other, each of you have to understand that, as Will Eisner says, every panel you need to transition to a next panel. And that's a break. Every page is a transition to another page. And certainly every scene, when you change scenes, is a transition to another scene. So let's say the fact that you have panels on the same page that are transitioning. Panel 1 is scene 1 and panel 2 is scene 2. There's a transition there, not only between the panels, but also between the scenes, which is, again, a larger gap and a break for your audience. And it is always a point where your audience can simply put the book down, because they control the timing of when everything happens. They don't have to sit there and watch it or get drawn into it mechanically like a television show or a movie. I know these days you can just pause anything, and you can put your transition point in wherever you want when you're watching a movie or a television show. But still, the point is that when you're reading a comic, there is that hurdle that you need to get over, which is the fact that there is transitions everywhere. And this is one of the things that Richard Meyer talks about a lot when he talks about creating comics. And one of the things that is his pet peeve with making comics, he thinks that all scene transitions should happen at the end of a page and the beginning of a new page, which I don't disagree with that. I just don't think it's always possible. Although, it depends on your ability to tell a story and how long you've done sequential art and understood the layout and how you're going to put everything on a page. Again, if you are a master of that, then yeah, you can put your transition of every scene at the end of one page, start of another, because again, that's a large transition break, and you want to, on the one hand, make it easier for the reader to realize there's a break in and a different scene between one panel and the other, but at the same time, there's also the chance you're going to lose the reader because they can put the book down. So again, it's catch 22. You want to do it, but if you do it, you're taking a chance. I don't know if that exactly would be a catch 22. Let me think. Anyway, but I'll just ramble a little bit longer about this. The reason why I wanted to talk about this, and I haven't even gotten into the meat of it yet, is the fact that I think that panel transition and scene transition is something, again, since it is so ingrained within the essence of telling a story with sequential art, there is beautiful and masterful ways that you can actually do this. And it's something that I want to incorporate more and more into my storytelling, the more and more I tell stories. Just a little bit of channel update here on that. I want to, well, I'll break off what I'm talking about and come back to panel transitions for a second, but I want to tell more and more stories. The problem with putting up Indiegogo campaigns and fulfilling them, and I'm putting everything I can into fulfilling the open campaigns that I have, and I will have more in the future. But I want to write. I'm a writer, and I want to write more than anything else. And I need to find faster ways to get these comics out to people. So I'm working on right now with an artist that we're going to probably do 8-page stories, comic stories, and I will be posting them somewhere online. Most probably starting a member part of the pay of the YouTube channel. I do have a subscribe star, but I don't really use it. So we'll probably be doing that, and I'm going to try to create more and more stories and tell more and more stories with sequential art. And that's the thing, because if I want to become really good at this and become a master of the essentials of sequential art, and transitions and understanding transitions is one of those things, then I need to do more and more of this. And it's taking, I can't just put out one book a year, 2 books a year, maybe 3 books a year. That's not enough. I want to do an 8-page story every, week, every 2 weeks, maybe every month if I'm doing something else. So I'm going to try to move into those kinds of online provisions for people for stories. They're going to be different stories. They're going to be unique stories, not ones that I've told before or published, just to let you know. Anyways, here's my point about transitions within sequential art. Again, there is masterful ways to do it. Now, there are simple ways that you can do it as well. I did in the Valiant Heroes, which is one of the books open right now. There's a transition scene that I use wherein you have one of the main characters, which is Farrell, and she's standing over she's running away from, actually, the body of a creature in the woods because she's just killed it. And then you have a scene break, and the next panel is the exact same shot of the exact same creature lying dead on the ground, but it's a different time frame because the first panel was in the night. Second panel is in the day, therefore you recognize there is a time shift there. I do believe, if I remember correctly, there's also a caption box letting you know that there is a time change, but it's Pulse, which is another one of the characters, standing over the body. And that's a simple scene transition. Let me put up some more masterful art in the background here, see if I can find some more to put up. I think these are covers, so let's go back. We'll see if there's anything more than covers here, but anyway, and we'll come back to that. But there are much more, we'll say, intricate ways to do this scene transition. And again, television shows and movies, they can do this as well, but I'm just saying that it is much more essential and important when you're dealing with sequential art because there are so many breaks. one of the breaks that I can think of from a manga that I've read recently was the fact that there was a scene transition wherein someone had just gone through a battle and they were bleeding, and the the scene was focusing on the blood dripping off of the main character's arm, and so his arm was mangled up basically, and blood was dripping off of it, and then there was a scene transition to the next panel wherein there was a drop of blood coming down off of the hero's hand, and then it transitioned to a drop of water dropping into a puddle off of a drain spout, which again, this is the intricate way that you can do scene transitions within sequential art. And certainly, again, you can do them in other mediums like television, movies. Not so much, I don't think, novels, unless you're very, very descriptive. But again, I could be mistaken on that. But the point is that to use these things with your sequential art, again, is to help control and to, I would say, soothe the audience into scene transitions in order for those scene transitions, even if they are panel to panel, to be understood and to be appreciated. Because really, quite honestly, I was just watching some older shows around, let's say, where when they were done around 1982. Anyways, and watching an old series of television shows where they had you know commercial breaks and all that kind of stuff. There was one episode of this television show where the scene transitions were just beautiful. And I said to myself, that was one of the best episodes ever. I think it was, what was I watching? I was watching Magnum PI, the original Magnum PI. It was one of the, I think it's probably the fourth season, and it's the first episode of the fourth season where Magnum gets thrown into the water and he has to tread water for like 16 hours. The scene transitions in that are amazing, and it just when I watch something like that, that's honestly, to me, that's a piece of art, because that's something that I want to do and be able to do within what I'm doing in creating comics. Let me change this. We're just showing covers here. I want to see scene transitions. Let's go back to Adams again here for a bit. Anyways, so that's the kind of thing that I think is an essential for comics. Now, why do I say that? Why am I calling it a comic essential? Again, went over that a little bit about the fact that there's so many breaks within a comic when you're telling a story. But again, as I said at the first, is something that's missing from so many comics today. And I think it's the exact same reason why, if you read current comics, and I know less and less of us do, but if you read current comics, you have people who don't understand continuity. Really, seriously, you don't. I've done multiple videos about this on my main, Saturday videos about these people, and they don't care about continuity. They don't understand continuity. They try to redefine continuity to something that it is not. Whereas if you can't understand simple things like continuity, about the fact that a character acts in a continuous way, and you can't just have them do A at one point and then 2 pages later have them do the exact opposite, it doesn't work. They don't understand that. They don't understand continuity of time. They don't understand continuity between, certainly, the past and characters. They're trying to actively destroy that continuity so that they can create their own. Again, when I talked about this in connection with that Zoom video of the Writers Guild of America that I covered, they tried to change the definition of continuity to a continuity of feeling, not a continuity of actions, which is what continuity is. They're saying, as long as the character feels right, then, and they have the same feeling, it's like a river of feeling, it can snake around and turn around on itself and go in the opposite direction. It doesn't matter as long as it feels correct. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not what continuity is. And my point with that is, since they can't even understand or don't want to understand for their own purposes what actual continuity is, then you cannot make good sequential art. I guess we'll put it that way. You cannot make good sequential art. Why? Because you need to be able to carry your audience continuously from panel to panel to panel, to page, issue to issue. You need to be able to do that in order to make your what you're creating readable. You really simply do. And it is that ability to transition from one panel to another, and then one page to another, and one scene to another, that you need to be able to understand a continuity of reality that not only is expressed within your mind, but within the minds of the reader, so they can follow along and they don't put the stupid book down. And that's exactly what you get right now. These people, these people that write comics, and I don't blame the artists in many of these circumstances. I blame the writer for current comics, but it could be the artist at points. The thing is that these people don't understand continuity, don't want to understand continuity. Therefore, when they're trying to put together a story which is continuous with all these breaks within the sequential art, they're simply following a pattern that they understand as continuous, not that everyone else will understand as continuous as a reader. And therefore, they're just losing everybody. And again, if that essential, let's just lay aside all the other things that they do wrong and all the other mumbo jumbo that they put into comics and the reason why they're doing it and everything else. Lay all of that aside. And the essential point of what they cannot do is they cannot convince the reader to keep reading. Why? Because they cannot understand the importance of a transition between, at the very least, one panel to another, so that you're operating on a basis of reality that both you and the reader can understand. And so you can carry them as an author, carry the reader through those transitions, which occur over and over and over again within a comic book, within sequential art. So again, that's my little spiel about why I think that many comics right now just lose an audience, and people find them boring. People find them, I don't know, off-putting would be a good way to put it, I think. But at the same time, it is working in that opposite direction is what I want to do. I want to not only master the art of seamless transitions, which will allow both my understanding of how the story goes to be mimicked in the understanding of the reader so that they know where I'm going with storytelling and they can therefore enjoy the story better, but to make it not just understandable, but to make it a part of the art itself so that when you're reading something, and like I was watching that episode of Magnum PI a little while ago, it was like when I finished watching that, and even when I was watching it, looking at the scene transitions, I said to myself, this is amazing. This is a piece of art. That's the level that I am used to as a comic reader, having read comics, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and, going back and reading older books than that as well. That's the kind of thing that I was used to. I always like to think of the fact that I don't know any language very well, and that would include English. Why? Because the first language I really learned was sequential art, because comics were always there for me. And so that sequential art was not just there, but it was masterfully told. And one of those masterful elements, which again, I would claim to be an essential of comics, is good scene transition. And I could probably go on over and over again with multiple videos about this, which I may do in the future if I have more time to put into this and give you a breakdown of some things, like a television show or even a very specific book. I think I might do that in the future. But let's go back to our comments and see, because I think I'm done in my little spiel for about 25 minutes about scene transitions and about why it's an essential part of comics. All right, let's see who's here. Gordon Goodbrother was here from the beginning. How you doing, Gordon? Let's see who else we got here. I gotta put some of these up in the background so that I can read them. They're so tiny on my screen. Krypton's Laston. Okay, how you doing? I'm not entirely sure I've seen you here before. Krypton, nice to see you here. John's Longbox was here. I think he's probably gone to bed by now. He's having a big day tomorrow. So Robert is here. How you doing, Robert? Let's see. Calliope is here. We got a few of the regulars. Let's see. Michael is here. How you doing? Let's see. Let's see. James is here. Says, "Hail! Not often I catch it live." Well, I'm glad that you are here tonight, James. Let's see. Let's see. I'm scrolling down to see if there's any questions in the comments. Michael says, "He's dead, Jim." um, best best way to go to a commercial. Yes, he's dead, Jim. Yeah, exactly. That's a scene transition for or scene break for an old Star Trek episode. Yeah, there you go. Here's your cliffhanger. That's a scene break, which again is a form of scene transition. But it's one of the things that quite honestly, I don't miss the commercials when I watch things like Star Trek, if I'm watching old Star Trek. And as I said last week, I'm just going to fish out my old DVDs, or not my old DVDs, my old VHS copies of Star Trek, and just watch those from now on instead of trying to watch them online anymore, just because of the nonsense with the new CGI and all that kind of stuff in them. But anyway, one of the funny things about that is the fact that if you read the gold key copy of Star Trek, the old published in the 70s, sorry. So the gold key comics for Star Trek, they do the story, and I think it's 6 or 7 page bursts, and you can see the exact pattern of the television show. And quite honestly, when you were reading, and I was just reading some of those books a couple of months ago, when you're reading those old gold key comics, they're playing off of the exact scene transitions and scene breaks from the television show. And when they hit that 8-page or 6 or 8-page break within the comic, I can quite honestly hear the music in the background. That's how well. Okay, we'll put up some beautiful covers here in the back. Let's see. We'll put up some more art here. Here's some Batman art. Anyway, but that's one of the things that really struck me when I read some of those gold key Star Trek comics again, was the fact that, yeah, I could hear the music at the 8-page break within the comic, just because that transition was so burned into my mind by watching those shows. So yeah, that's one of the things that would be unique to Star Trek itself, but it is a great example of that kind of thing. Let's see. Scrolling down. James says, what does James say? James says, page-based scene transitions are why I picked up some Junjito. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but okay. So let's see. Because yeah, again, James, anyone who can do good scene transitions, I think that if they can do that, they've probably mastered the elements, certainly, of essential storytelling. So they're probably a good storyteller to begin with. Scrolling down, let's see. That one wasn't for me. Sorry, Robert, putting your stuff up in the on the main screen. Let's see. Conversation between Gordon and Robert here. Mystic is here. How you doing, Mystic? It's one thing to watch, another to read. Indeed. Which we're looking at a scene in the background of Batman and the Frank Miller use of television screens to put up dialogue and exposition in the background, which, quite honestly, Frank Miller did it, and it worked for 1 or 2 books, and then everybody else started to copy it, and it just became exposition, and then you're just reading text, and it's ridiculous. So that's my little take on that. But let's see. Scrolling down. James says different mediums are differently satisfying. Yes, indeed, I would agree. He also says it's most obvious in things like fight sequences. You can convey much more information at much less viewer effort in video format than in comics, and certainly better than prose. Okay, James, thank you very much for bringing that up. That was something that I meant to talk about, because I did an entire video about what I considered the best sequential art fight scene ever, and it was in a 1980s X-Men book, Uncanny X-Men book done by Paul Smith was the artist. Chris Claremont, I do believe, was the writer, and it was between Wolverine and Silver Samurai. And again, the reason why, and again, you want to go back and watch a video, I'm sure I did it about a year ago. It's still up on my channel. But the reason why, one of the reasons why, main reasons why I said that that fight scene was the best I had ever seen within comics was because I could seamlessly move from panel to panel with the movement in between the 2 or 3 or whatever panels that you're moving towards. I could seamlessly see the movement without the movement actually being there, without the movement of something you would get in a television show or a movie where you would get to see every frame. No, in a comic book, in sequential art, you can only see one frame every 30 frames, maybe every 50 frames. You get one. That's it. So you got to be able to, especially with a fight scene, you got to be able to follow along what is going on in that scene in order to understand who's winning, who's getting hurt, especially again within modern comics. You're not going to hurt. They never gave any flaws to their so-called heroes, so they're never going to get hurt. So what do they care? But in a good scene, in a good fight scene, yeah, your hero is going to get at the very least hit once or twice. So you got to be able to follow the sequence of the blows as they come extremely quickly, and to do that, again, scene transition is an essential element, and the better you can transition your panel to panel so that the reader can move seamlessly from one to another and within a rapid succession pace, because that's what fight scenes do, then again, that's what makes a beautiful and really some of the best fight scenes within sequential art, like the one I was talking about. So thank you very much for bringing that up, James. James also says, but words can communicate other information easier than visual data like backstory context. Yes, that's one of the things that Robert E. Howard is really good at, if you ask me. He's good at using, I always say this on my channel, he's good at using to communicate just enough information about the scene so that you are on edge, so that you know exactly what's going on, but he doesn't mince words, nor does he waste words. And he does that. He gives you just enough so that you can have a good picture of what is going on in the background, and let your imagination just take off. So yeah, I agree with you, James. Words can communicate other information, and a good storyteller can and use that. Oh, look, here we have Robert says you can. Robert, I was not looking at your comment when I made my comment just now, but Robert E. Howard, we are thinking on the same lines. He says, you can do vivid fight scenes in prose. See Robert E. Howard, but I get what you mean. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Michael says, Tom Selleck did a good job in that show. He did indeed. I'm just going to put some, let's see. Put on some just beautiful art in the background here. Some Jusco, I think, is what this is. But anyways, back to our comments here. Yes, Michael, I agree 100%. Let's see. James also says, the restrictions of prose are not something I can discuss satisfactory in a YouTube chat. Yeah, I don't know if I could do it satisfactory in an hour-long video, James. So you're right on that. Oh, Taz is here. How you doing, Taz? With a £5 super chat. Thank you very much, Taz. He says, "Hey, RJ, a bit late, but great to be here. Thank you very much for showing up, Taz, and thank you very much for the super chat." All right, let's see. Mystic also says, the 2018 Magnum PI reboot was enjoyable enough. Yeah, there was a different, but it has its own unique charm. I never did watch that Magnum PI series. I'm good with watching the old one. Let's see. Let's see. Mystic also says, Speaking of continuity, the original Magnum PI apparently took place in the same universe as the original Hawaii 5-0. Magnum referenced McGrath in the pilot. It's funny you should mention that, Mystic. Quite honestly, I always here's a really funny thing. Within the 80s, anyways, a lot of shows were connected to each other. And I always thought to myself, someone should go through those shows and see how many of them are connected to each other. Because let's look at Magnum PI just as an example. Okay, Magnum PI, you're saying, is linked to Y50 now, and it happens in the same universe. Well, I know that because of guest star appearances, that Magnum PI occurs in the same universe as Simon and Simon, and this because they guest starred on one of the Magnum shows. And also, I think Murder She Wrote. What was her name? And I can't remember, but Murder She Wrote universe. I think she was in one of the later episodes of Magnum PI in one of the later seasons. So again, takes place in the same universe. So if you took all the shows that were connected to that universe and then went into those shows and saw what guest stars they had and what universe they were connected to and all these kinds of things, it would be immense, if you ask me. Because one of the what made me think about this was because I think it was the fact that some of the characters from St. Elsewhere were actually guest starring in other shows as well. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head, but at the end of St. Elsewhere, everything that happened in the show was actually, I think, a delusion within the mind of an autistic child. And that's what the entire show was, which is funny. So I thought to myself, it would be funny to see how many shows were actually connected to St. Elsewhere through their guest appearances on other shows and guest appearances on their show, and see how many that would actually be in this so-called universe. You got me off on a tangent there, Mystic, but yeah, I always thought that would be a fun thing to do. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down, see who else is here. If we have any comments, any questions, let's see. Again, here's people actually getting to the same points I was just talking about. Taz says, Murder She Wrote is part of Magnum. There was one episode where J.B. Fletcher saves him from jail time. All right. Well, there's a confirmation. Thank you very much, Taz. So let's see. Scrolling down. James says, maybe I'm just a weeb, but manga really has some memorable transitions. It does indeed. I agree. That's where some of the, I would say, masters of scene transition are right now, are writing manga. Let's see. Scrolling down. See if there's any other comments for me. Michael says, I noticed that different TV stations put the commercials in different places than CBS, so the breaks feel really awkward at times. Yep. There is instances of that happening, but I couldn't say which. Let's see, scrolling down. James says, how long ago did you do that video? I'll check it out tomorrow on the best fight. Yeah, I think it was probably year and a half ago. It should have a thumbnail of, I think, the cover of that X-Men book, which is a picture of Wolverine and his wife to be on a wedding invitation, and the picture on the wedding invitation has Silver Samurai's sword through it. Anyways, if I remember correctly, that's the thumbnail for it. So just if you're looking for it, James. All right, scrolling down. Mystic also says, one of the things I love about comics as a medium is how it forces the reader to animate these sequences within their minds. Quite honestly, Mystic, I think that is, you hit the nail on the head. That is one of the beautiful things about comics. And I never realized this until, I was probably in my late teens, but every time I would read a novel, I would actually put it to sequential art. Quite honestly, I would think of it. I thought of it at first as I would storyboard the entire thing, and it would all look as where is this scene coming from? where is this shot going to be shot from? Is it a worm's eye view? Is it an overview? Why? Because I was actually thinking about sequential art when I was reading prose, quite honestly. So yeah, that's one of the beautiful things. One of the things that sequential art does, and that has wormed its way so early into my mind that that's how my mind works. Let's see. Scrolling down. Da, da. Let's see. A quick question here from Mystic RJ. Google up the Tommy Westfall theory, and we can see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Okay, I will. I can't do that right now. As I said, my my technological prowess is that of an Amish. So I would just be leaving you in dead silence if I went and Googled something right now. But thank you for letting me know about that, Mystic. I will do that later. Let's see. James also says, dropping drooping off. Good luck. Find a way to accelerate releases, man. I think you've got the right attitude. Yeah. Thank you very much, James. And he's talking about the fact that, yeah, I'm going to start publishing things in a web format, but it's going to be a comic web format. It's not going to be, webtoons. It's going to be, here's 8 pages of sequential art, and maybe some way, somehow I'm going to, publish them in other formats, which are physical in the future. But from now on, I want to write. And if I have artists that want to work with me, and I do have plenty of artists that want to work with me, then that's what I'm going to do. And hopefully the memberships that people will get from the channel in order to read the stuff will be enough to pay for, well, basically paying the artist, because they're not paying me. I just want to write. Let's see, scrolling down. Question here. Do you like West Coast Avengers from the 80s? Not entirely sure if this is directed towards me, but yes, I do very much like the West Coast Avengers from the 80s. But that being said, I think it was very much the reason why I liked it so much was because of John Byrne. John Byrne did a lot of the art for West Coast Avengers, and I just love John Byrne's art. It's so clean and beautiful. That's why I love Renzo's art, the artist that works with me. I think of him either as a young John Byrne or a young George Perez. So yeah, I think I have almost the entire run of the 80s West Coast Avengers. Let's see. Scrolling down. Oh, look, J.R.R. Tolkien. T.R.R. Jolkin is here. That's a mouthful when you're used to saying J.R.R. Tolkien. Good evening, Carbon Units. Good evening, TRR. How you doing? Robert says, did you just assume my chemical makeup? Good heavens. Let's see. Some of us may be silicon-based life form. That brings me back to Star Trek. Wasn't there a silicon-based life form that burrowed into tunnels? I can't remember the episode name, on the mining colony. Anyways, let's see if I can get through some more of these comments. Riot Kitty says, I've often thought about publishing on a site with finished pages as I get them done for my future comic. Yeah, here's the thing about that, talking about what I'm going to do. I don't think I'm going to do, well, I'm going to do pages probably going to be black and white. That's what I'm going to do. Some of them might be color. I don't know if color is needed at all. But again, it's just probably going to be me and the artist and maybe a letterer. Or if the artist or I can do the lettering, one or the other. I don't know, but I'm going to make it as quick and efficient as possible, and waiting for the colorist to do his job is just another step and just another person to pay. Maybe in the future, if we get enough steam going, and I have enough stories going at one time, and we have enough people paying for them so that I can pay the colorist as well, then yeah. But other than that, I think we'll probably save the colored pages for the ones that I will print out and sell. So I might take some of these in the future if we get this done, and then and then color them and publish them, depending on how much everybody loves them. If it's a good story and people say, publish this, this is the next one, this is the next backstory, or sorry, this is the next backup story, what you should publish with the next campaign, then yeah, I'll listen to my audience. Taz says, RJ, did you know there was a Crom character made by Gardner Fox in the 50s? Yes, I did. I think basically, what is he? He looks very much like Conan, except he's blonde, if I remember correctly. If I'm thinking of the same character, but yes, I do realize there was a Crom character in the 50s. Let's see. Oh, Sound Engraver is here. How you doing, Sound Engraver, with the $2 super chat? Thank you very much. And she says, I have to catch this one on replay. Well, thank you very much for the super chat, Sound Engraver. I also always like to shout out Sound Engraver and say, click on her icon and go on over to her channel. She does very similar stuff to what I do in my Saturday videos, talking about culture and pop culture, and sometimes just where things have gone horribly wrong. Let's see. Let's see. Another question here. Do you like Mockingbird and Tigra? The funny thing about Tigra is, if you listen, well, I'm already 46 minutes into this video, and now I'm going off on deep sidetracks. But the funny thing about Tigra is the reason why if I remember correctly, she exists as a character even to begin with, was because the comic code did not allow werewolves to be portrayed in the books that were put out under the code. Up until, I think it was probably the mid 70s, maybe even the late 70s. So one of the ways they tried to find, again, unique ways to get around all of these restrictions. And one of the ways to get around this restriction was to create Tigra, because she's not technically a werewolf. And she's a female at the same time. So they just created this character somebody created the character in order to tell werewolf stories without a werewolf in them. And that's where that character originally came from, or part of the reason why it came to be. It's funny that the character actually morphed into something that's still here, almost 50 years later. I think Tiger is probably a character that's been around for 50 years. So, yes, I don't know. Mockingbird always sticks in my mind from the 1980s Hawkeye series, and she wasn't the best character in that. So within West Coast Avengers, she was a good character, but not within the Hawkeye series. I didn't really like her in that series, and it kind of soured me on that character. Not entirely, I wouldn't say, but Tigra, I have no complaints about. Although the fact that people draw her majorly differently nowadays, and have, I think, for quite some time now, the last 10 years, they just put her stripes all over the place and nowhere within what the character has traditionally looked like. So that kind of is off-putting. Let's see, scrolling down. Oh, Mystic has a good question, I think. Do you think a Legion of Superheroes title is sustainable at this time? No, I don't think it is at this time. I think I'm pushing the boundaries, having a team book with 5 to 6 characters. I'm really pushing the boundaries with that. Legion of Superheroes, where you're introducing, they had dozens of characters all the time. And I just don't think that is plausible. The only reason I think that Legion of Superheroes actually worked, and I really don't think that, I don't like the new Legion of Superheroes. I certainly don't like what they're publishing right now. But I think the only reason why it was able to exist as a book, because I loved Legion of Superheroes in the 80s. I loved the Keith Giffen stuff, and then I loved the reboot of the entire thing with the new characters. It was all great to me. The only reason why it could was because it had such a long history, and that history piggybacked off of the I guess, I don't know, the pop culture icon of Superman, and that's it. If it wasn't for Superman, they wouldn't exist. If they weren't continually brought up in Superman stories, they wouldn't exist. And that was the only reason why people would put up with that many characters in a book, is because it was around for so long before even the 80s, when it got into what I think is the height of the Legion of Superheroes. So no, I don't think someone, well, I would say maybe DC could do it again with actual Legion of Superheroes if they were to, you know, stay true to what the original characters actually were, which they're not. But I don't think someone could create such a title right now. And it's a marathon. Again, a reason why it exists is the marathon of stories from previous ages. Let's see. Tony is here. How you doing, Tony? Says, hey, RJ, good stream earlier. Well, I like I said, I wasn't very much part of the conversation between John's Longbox and Mike Barron, but I got to throw my 2 cents in every once in a while and enjoy their conversation along with the rest of you. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael says, yes, The Devil in the Dark is the episode. Oh, is the episode of Star Trek with the silicon-based life form. All right. Tony says, RJ, what are your thoughts on the Ripperverse? From what I've read so far, I'm not impressed. Quite honestly, I'll tell you right off the bat, Tony, I don't own any of the Ripperverse comics, so I couldn't positively tell you much about it. I was given some stuff to read, but I don't own it myself. And a lot of people tell me the exact same thing, that they're just simply not impressed. I think that it's a good thing for comics, and certainly indie comics, that Eric has such a large platform and can do this and is giving platform back to comics. But again, I couldn't evaluate his storytelling skills. That's hopefully, I think, going to change, because he's hiring people like Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron and others who are great older comic storytellers. So maybe something spectacular will come of it. But again, that's not throwing any shade on Eric, because I don't know enough about his writing to actually say that. I'm just telling you what I've heard from many people. Scrolling down. Riot Kitty says, I'm only here for a time. Good night. Well, good night, Riot Kitty. Tony also has a question. RJ, do you know what's the problem between Baron and Rude? No, actually, I don't. Mike and John were talking about on the stream just an hour ago, what was going on there, and I was completely lost. I don't know what the problem between them is. Let's see. Scrolling down. TRR says, this guy is so insightful to me for a few years now. Which guy would that be? Mike Barron? I will take that to mean Mike Barron, just because I don't want to feign praise. Let's see. Mystic says, Tigra exploiting loopholes since 1974. Quite honestly, it's really interesting if you know anything about the comic code and when it changed, and if you read the exact comic code, because it's online now. Like you never could read it before, but it's online now, and you can read when it changed, little thing here, a little thing there. And then if you apply those timelines to the publishing, especially of Marvel Comics, you can see why they developed certain kinds of characters, certain kinds of stories in the time that they did. But it's really an interesting thing if you want to look into a hidden corner of the history of comics. Let's see. Scrolling down. Gordon says, I don't care for Tigra or She-Hulk, etc., with flat hair. Well, again, one of the things that brought me to She-Hulk was John Byrne. Again, if you take the character out from the creative resource of John Byrne, I'm not entirely sure that I would buy the book. And back in the time when John Byrne created that first She-Hulk run that he did, once he left the book, I think I left the book as well. So I'm always drawn by the art. It's all sequential art to me. Let's see. Scrolling down. Mystic says, let's put this up here. Mystic says, Bendis actually made me dislike the Legion. Achievement unlocked. Yeah, well, I'm right there with you, Mystic. I was when they did that storyline where they had, I think it was the pre-Legion storyline. I can't remember where they had. It was a large book, and it was one of the characters like Thorn or something like that coming through time and connecting all of the timelines into one for the DC universe. So she started off with the core Batman Superman time, then went into I think it was OMAC timeline, and then into the um, Kumandi timeline, and then from that into the Legion of Superheroes timeline. I thought to myself, someone connecting those things all together, that's great. That gives me hope for this book and for what's going to come out of it. And then the Legion of Superheroes book came out, and I went, yeah, I'm not reading this. This is ridiculous. This is just, again, as I'm always saying nowadays, when I run across these things, I think to myself, why not? If I want to go read Legion of Superheroes, I got long box after long box of Legion of Superheroes, and I probably forget half of them. Go read those over again. Let's see, scrolling down. Tony says, who's the better hero between the Shadow and Solomon Kane? Ooh, that is a difficult question, Tony, but a really interesting one, because here's the thing. If I never really did a video, a lot of people have been asking me to do a video about anti-heroes. I don't like anti-heroes, but if there was an anti-hero that might actually be qualified as a hero, because I think anti-heroes are not heroes. That's the whole point. They're anti-heroes. I think that if there's one hero, anti-hero, that could be listed both as a hero and an anti-hero, it would be Solomon Kane, because he has a drive. He has a drive to do heroic things, but it's not a conscious drive on his own. Now, that's one of the things I think about anti-heroes that I dislike them so much, is because it's basically the Kramer effect. They just fall backwards into doing heroic things, although they didn't mean to do them. Solomon Kane is different, because Solomon Kane has an instinctual drive, if you want to call it that. It might even be, I would say, if you're going back to the Robert E. Howard way of describing it, in the 20s, it would probably be a blood drive, a drive from his ancestry to do something good and right. But it's not him consciously really choosing to do it, except to choose to follow that which is driving him forward, if you know what I mean. It's not him saying, I want to be Superman. It's not him saying, I want to be Sir Galahad. It's him saying, I feel this thing within me and I must fulfill it. So to me, he would be someone that you could probably list as a hero and an anti-hero at the same time. So that being said, let's look at the Shadow for half a second. The Shadow, again, the thing about the Shadow is it depends on, there is so much, I don't know. I'll start again, because I don't know how to actually explain this. There's so many stories of the Shadow, and there are so many people that have written Shadow stories, and there are so many ways that that story has been told, within radio plays, within novels, within short stories, and now within movies, of course, things like that, in comics. There are just so many ways that that character has been expressed, and it's always different depending on the difference of who is telling the story, that it's hard to get that character nailed down. But again, I would say that the Shadow himself is a hero, but he's more a hero in the sense of he is serving a much more larger construct, if you will, because the original Shadow stories were all dependent upon the Shadow network that he had going, and they work with the police and everything else. And that's the thing. Some of the older stories, some of the radio plays and things like that, you don't even see the Shadow until the last 5 minutes. That's it. All the other thing is about the mystery and about the Shadow organization that he has of people solving this mystery on his behalf. Then he shows up and cleans up at the end. So to me, it seems like, I don't know. It's more of I want to be part of a societal solution, because the societal solution doesn't work exactly the way that it should for various reasons within those stories. So to call him a hero, so is I think, yes, correct, but a hero in a much, much different way than Solomon Kane. So who is the better hero? I honestly would say Solomon Kane, even though, again, I think he can be listed as an anti-hero as well. Um, so you could have me go on and on and on about that question, Tony. But I think hopefully that'll do for tonight. Calliope says, I'm confused. What did the comics code for? Why did the comics code forbid werewolves? It was. I'm not entirely sure why. Like there was other things that were forbidden at the time as well. Basically, you couldn't have zombies either because it smacked of necromancy, things like that. I think for werewolves, however, it was probably because the Comics Code Authority came into existence partly because of the horror tales that were being produced before the Comics Code came in, and was the EC Comics. And so they basically took all the horror tropes and threw them into the basket and said, okay, none of this. That would be my guess. Because I know some of them, again, like zombies, which were forbidden. Some of them had a very specific reason why, but I can't remember what the reason for werewolves was. Again, this is why you have in what is it, the early Swamp Thing books, you have these characters which look like they're zombies, but they're not really zombies. They're something else entirely. They're part of a bigger. I can't remember. I can't even remember what they were, but they're like deformed people, part of a hive mind thing. So, but they couldn't make zombies. They wanted to have zombies, but they couldn't because it was against Comics Code. So, so I'm not entirely sure how to answer that, Calliope. I should look that up though. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Mystic might have an answer here. Yeah, this is exactly what I said because they were a staple of EC Comics. Exactly. Everybody here thinks in the chat what I'm going to say later. Honestly, I don't read ahead. I couldn't if I tried. Let's see. Taz says, I think Jim Shooter made a lot of impact on Legion of Superheroes. He gave a lot of character traits that made them interesting. Well, that was his whole plan. Listening to talks from Jim Shooter, that was his plan. He said, I wanted to make the characters have like, he made new characters like Karate Kid because he wanted to have a visual style to their actual powers. He wanted to get away from the idea of what he called pointy powers, wherein a character would point at something and then their power would activate. So yeah, he helped immensely develop those characters. I agree, Taz. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zach Dan is here. Says I just tried to catch up on your last stream and I saw you were live. Great to have you, Zach Dan. We're just finishing up some of these comments here. We've already been streaming for an hour. Let's see. Mystic says, I was contemplating an alternate history where Jim Shooter stayed in DC in the 1970s and what effect it would have on comics. He would have whipped the entire thing into shape in the fact that he would have continuity long before they tried to do it within the Crisis on Infinite Earths. That's what he would have done. And then he would have made DC something that would have given Marvel a run for its money. So it would be a different world. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the entire thing. Scrolling down. Mystic also says, I now want to go read my mom's old issues of Adventure Comics starring the Legion. Well, those are Adventure Comics. They're a bit campy, but at the same time fun if you're in the right mindset. Tony also says, RJ, what are your thoughts on X-Men 97 animated series showrunner being fired a week before it premieres? I actually don't know much about it. I haven't got to delve into that at all this week because there's so many other things going on. So I don't think I could comment in an informed way on that, Tony. So let's see. Scrolling down, Zach Dan also says, do motivational characteristic heroes start as anti-heroes? Motivational cathartic heroes. Sorry. Do motivational cathartic heroes start as anti-heroes? Not entirely sure. That's an interesting question. They could. That's certainly possible. because they're trying in a catharsis to get rid of the points of what is within them, that to divest themselves of I guess you would say those vices. So that certainly could be the way it would go, Zachtan, but I don't think it's necessarily that way all the time. Zachtan also says, my general rule of thumb is that anti-heroes have villainous qualities, but they are on the side of good in the end. If that's what your definition of an anti-hero is, that would make a lot more sense of what an anti-hero is for a lot of comics and what a lot of people would claim. To me, an anti-hero, just from my research, a lot of people would claim the definition would be someone who basically does heroic things even though they don't try to do them. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael says, wasn't Solomon Grundy a zombie? I don't remember. Solomon Grundy, I think, I don't, he seemed more of a, what would you call it? Frankenstein character than a zombie. But you could claim that those two things are the same. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. Zach Dan says, Comics Code forced them to get creative at least. Yeah, that's one of the things that I think that many people mistake my praise for the Comic Code about, is the fact that, yes, it did force them to get creative. And I think that's very much the way that it made comics better. Strictly Jake says, I'm pretty black-pilled on indie comics at the moment. I hope your books come out soon. Yes, I am trying to move heaven and earth to get them out as soon as possible. Strictly Jake. Let's see. Abrex is here. Says Jim Shooter kicked Legion of Superheroes up a few notches and added depth, because one of the things he did, I listened to a interview that he did, and he said that he went to his editor and said, I want to put in continuity, what they're doing over at Marvel. And his editor said, we don't do that here at DC, but he snuck it in anyways. And his editor, he said, was, after a few months, just looking at him out of the corner of his eye going, I know what you're doing. We don't do that here. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why he kicked it up a notch. Let's see. Scrolling down. Taz says, Shadow and Solomon Kane, both great in their own right, but Solomon is on the supernatural element, whereas the Shadow is on the detective element. I always thought there was some kind of, there is, if I remember correctly, some kind of supernatural element to the Shadow, but maybe I'm just mixing up the different iterations of the character. Let's see. Scrolling down. Strictly Jake says, you are the best dude. Thomas Valiant is my favorite book I've read in years. Well, thank you very much. And hopefully you were here, Strictly Jake, to hear my plans, which I'm working with another artist right now, because I had a script ready to go, but I couldn't do anything with it because I just can't produce another book right now. So I said, okay, I'm done. I want to get these stories out faster. So I'm just going to take this script that I already have and get it to an artist that wants to work with me. And we're going to do, at the very least, a story within 8-page bursts, and probably put it out on my channel in a members area, maybe. And really, hopefully, I'm going to get more and more material out there for people to read. All right, so we've come to the end of the chat. I want to thank everyone for showing up. Hopefully, I didn't mumble too much tonight. I was a little bit tired just because I had already been on an hour live stream with John and talking to Mike Barron. But I want to thank everyone again for showing up here tonight. And I am going to have, I do believe the schedule is, we have comic book team up on my channel next Wednesday instead of Make Comics Great Again. So if you're looking for us next Wednesday, that should be at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time with Make Comics Great Again here, if we can, get our act together. So thank you once again, everyone, for showing up. I'm going to leave you with the normal outro that I give, which is the 45-second trailer for Crom the Destroyer. And as I failed to mention once again, there are links in the description for my 3 graphic novels, if anyone is interested in the Crom the Destroyer or Thomas Valiant or the Valiant Heroes. So I'll see you all later. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, No matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.